Welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'd like to preface this video by saying thank you so much for the positive responses in the previous video. It really does encourage me to make more of these kinds of videos in the future, and I truly mean it when I say that I really do appreciate the positive response. Without further ado, let us continue with our series. This is the third video in my series of map callouts for new players in Valorant. The map we will be covering today is Ascent. This is usually the most beloved map by most players, and so I hope I will do it justice today. This side, as you can see, is attacker side spawn, which is where I am right now. Attackers will spawn right over here, and they will either walk in two directions. They will walk this way, which leads to B site, or they will walk this way, which leads to A site. I would like to cover B site first, since B site has a bit more specific callouts that are not listed on the map. As you can see on the mini-map, it has two reference points to, I guess, look at. And they're not exactly helpful in determining important angles for attackers and defenders, and so I would like to explore B site first. Without further ado, let's get started. So I guess let's run into the first spot first. So now we have this area right over here known as B lobby. This is B lobby as we can see on the ping, because there is it says B lobby on the ping and on the minimap as well, and so there's no really other way to call it that. Some people refer to it as spawn. Like myself, I sometimes call this spawn, B lobby. But yeah, now to move on to the other spot of B site, which well, it's not really B site, but it's B site leaning, since it's on the B side of the map. So now we call this area right over here as tiles. This is known as tiles since this has tiles right here. As you can see, this has tiles on the floor, and if you were a defender and you spot an attacker on this spot of the map, you would call this spot tiles, like so. Now to move on to the first extremity of the map. As you can see, this is an extremity due to the fact that there is an orb right here, and this extremity is known as B main. It says so on the map, like so, and so everyone refers to this spot as B main. And there's a little pocket right here. We would mostly refer to this pocket as a cubby, as mentioned in the previous video. These little pockets right here, which a lot of players like to play, are known as cubbies, and it's important to know that call out, I guess. Why is it called an extremity? An extremity, like I said in the previous video, is known as the first line of contact between enemies, and each side has incentive to control an extremity, because as an attacker, if you control an extremity, this allows you access into site, right? You have access onto site, and you will be able to entry onto site and begin to take control over it. But if you are a defender, you also want to take control of this extremity, because it staves away attackers and it limits their options to plant the bomb, and it limits their access onto a site to plant the bomb. It wastes more time for an attacker, and so controlling extremities is very important in this game, and a lot of people overlook that. So yeah, that is basically why controlling an extremity is important. Now to cover B site itself. The first nuanced, more specific callout that is not on the map is this spot right here. This spot is known as logs. Why does this spot have a specific callout, you may ask? Well, this spot is a very powerful spot to control, or to play, because if I were tucked into this spot right here, when attackers clear angles, they will clear so like this. and they usually clear this, they clear this, they clear this, they clear this, they clear this, like so. But if I were tucked neatly into this corner right here, they will not be able to see my character, unless you had like a heavy weapon or an operator or something like that, which I guess peeks out of this corner. But even still, with a vandal or with a phantom or something, they will not be able to see you. And so, as an attacker, the only way you would be able to clear this angle is if you were to hard clear it like this. But this exposes you to many angles. This exposes you to this angle. This exposes you to this angle, to this angle, and to this angle, and to this angle, and so on and so forth. And as you can see, this is a very dangerous angle to play, because attackers will oftentimes ignore that angle and will just try and run down this corridor right here and ignore this angle. And if I were a defender, this will net me a free kill because they will not see you and you can just shoot them like so. So as an attacker, you want to know this angle, and this angle right here is known as logs. So now you know this dangerous angle right here. Now to move on to the rest of B site. We have right here and this corridor is known as lane, and as a defender you want to call out this specific corridor as lane because most attackers will just rush in like so, and they will jump on down to site and plant the spike and start to play off the spike. And so if you want to let attackers know, or if you want to let defenders know where people are walking in, then they will refer to this corridor as lane, like so. Lane is also not on the map like logs, but it is still very important to know the call out for. So now you know another specific call out for B site. Now to cover this spot right here. This spot is known as the switch because, well, I broke the door earlier since I was just playing around by myself here. But this switch allows you to close a door, which will close down here, and it cuts off a line of access for defenders which would like to rotate onto B sites. So this only limits access to defenders to come from this spot right here. This spot is known as CT because CT is where defenders come from. As you can see, defenders will spawn right here, and the only way to gain access to B site is through this path right here, and so this path is known as CT. Now to move on to this spot right here, which is for defenders. Defenders will usually play this spot since there's a neat little off angle which people will have to clear. So people will play this off angle, and so as an attacker, you want to know that this spot right here is known as stairs. Pretty self-explanatory, right? This is known as stairs, and the opposite side of B site is known as lane. Now we move to cover the site itself. As you can see, this spot right here is known as default because this is the most common spot to plant the spike, and it provides cover. As you can see, there's 3 boxes right here, and it provides the most ample cover for an attacker to plant the spike. Now to move on to this spot right back here, which is known as either backsite or as known on the ping as boathouse. It's known as boathouse because there are boats back here, like so. Also pretty self-explanatory when you come to explore this map, but yeah, this is known as boathouse or backsite. Both are the same thing, and like I said, it's okay to refer to this spot on the map as both ways. It comes down to personal preference, and this video is to show you both callouts, and so that you won't get confused between the two of them, right? Because if you refer to one way or the other, now you know both callouts under your belt, and it comes down to personal preference, like I said, to refer to it however you want. You can refer to it as boathouse, or you can refer to it as backsite. They are the same thing. Now, I would like to cover parts of mid. So now we have this spot right here, which is known as market, as you can see on the minimap. It's called market because there is some stuff that you can, that looks like it's set up as a market. It's, like I said, pretty self-explanatory. It's looking like you're gonna be selling stuff. Like, it looks like there's some lemons, some oranges, some grapes, I assume, some weird-ass looking grapes, some lemons on the ground. But yeah, this is known as market. And market is a pretty important vantage point to control because the door will be shut here, and the switch will enable the door to be shut. Like I said, I broke the door, and so that's why it's like sparking right over here. But yeah, like I said, this is market, and you will be able to have a vantage point of mid, and you'll be able to have a vantage point of B main and lane as well, and so you can play some pretty neat off angles, but be wary of logs. Logs is where a lot of people, even in market players, do not clear, and so that's why logs is a very dangerous angle. So please learn logs. Logs is a very powerful angle. Now to move on to the rest of mid. We have right here deep mid. It says defender side spawn right here, but it's important to distinguish the many parts of mid on Ascent, because Ascent has this little pocket right here, and they have it has this spot right here known as deep mid. It's not on the map, like I said, because it is more nuanced, it's more specific, and not a lot of new players will be able to learn from the minimap alone, and so that's what this video is for, is to make it easier on you and to give you a tour of Ascent. So this spot right here is known as deep mid, and a lot of players like to smoke it, and attackers will smoke this spot right here, which is deep mid, and which will kind of cut off the view of defenders and will allow attackers to move into market, like so. As chamber, I like to put my trips on this this little pocket right here, or this little cubby, but this cubby has a special name on it, which is on the minimap, known as pizza. As you can see, there's pizza right here, and so we refer to it as pizza, and if you were to refer to pizza, it would mean this cubby right here. Now to move on to bottom mid. This is known as bottom mid because it is on the minimap, and the opposite side of mid, which is top mid, which I guess provides a bit of a difference between the two sides. Bottom mid is where defenders will come from, and top mid is where attacker's side will come from, which is right on the ping right over here. Now I am standing in the courtyard. Courtyard is known as courtyard since it's on the minimap, but a lot of players, like myself, like to refer to it as just mid, since it's in the direct center of the map, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's in the direct center of the map, and so now you know where mid is. Now, as an attacker, I will now cover A side now. So like I said, now I am walking on top mid, like so, and like I said, this is where this was where attackers will come from, and bottom mid is where defenders will come from, and so a lot of gunfights will happen right here and right here. Now time to cover this corridor right here, which is known as catwalk. This is known as catwalk since it is on the minimap. This spot is not nuanced in any sort of way. It's not specific, and so catwalk is also referred to up here as well. And so yeah, there's also a cubby right here in catwalk. But yeah, if you were to split A from this path or this path through catwalk, now you know where catwalk is. And so a lot of people from attacker's side will contest catwalk, which is up here, and they will proceed to engage in a lot of gunfights through tiles and through catwalk. So now you know where catwalk is, which is right here, and now you know where tiles is, which is right here, and so a lot of gunfights will take place here. Now I will walk into tree. The reason why it's called tree is because there's a giant tree, right? And this is another important spot right here since it gains you access to A site itself. And so a lot of players will like to turn on the switch and close the door, which will cut off an access point onto A site. And so the only way to gain access to A site is through over here or over here, which I will cover shortly. But before I do so, I will cover this spot right over here, which is known as Garden. It's, like I said, says so on the map, and there's some flowers over here. And so now you can see why this is called Garden. And so this grassy area is known as Garden, and it's a very specific part of the map. And so yeah, this area right here is known as Garden, and this will gain you access to Tree, or you can jump onto this spot right here, which is a very small spot, but it still has a call out on the minimap, which is known as Window. I broke the window here earlier, but on the start of a round, there will be a glass window which is breakable and will make a sound when you break it. But yeah, this is known as Window because there is normally a window right here. Now to cover A site itself. Oh, actually, before I do that, let me cover the last extremity on the map. So, like I said, attackers will either go into A site of two ways. It will either be through Catwalk, or it will be through this path right here, which is known as A main. And A main is the final extremity. As you can see, there's an orb right here, which is the first line of contact between the two enemies, right? You will either be peeking into a defender, or a defender will be peeking into an attacker and to see whether or not they will be hitting A site or B site. But now you know that this path right here is known as A main, but there's a little special spot of A main known as Wine, because there is wine right over here, and it's a very powerful angle to hold right over here. It's sort of like logs on B site, in the sense that a lot of attackers will not clear this angle right over here. They normally just walk into A main and will try and like clear angles onto A site like so, but they will ignore this angle entirely. And so sometimes they will just run in, and what I like to do is play like a rat and shoot them when they're not looking. And so if you were to make a call out to let people know that someone is playing right here, you will say that they are playing Wine, which is this spot right here. Now to cover A site itself and the final part of the map. So now we have right here, which is default. Funny enough, on Ascent, this is not the most common spot to plant. The most common spot to plant is right here. But there has to be a way to distinguish between the two, and so we like to refer to this spot as Generator, because as you can see, there's a giant generator over here. And this spot as well, this also is known as Generator because, well, it surrounds the generator. And a lot of players either call it Generator or Gen E, but all three are the same thing. So so this video is to teach you all three callouts, and so that you won't get confused in the future what it is referencing. So now you know it's this spot right here, which we'll cover from here, and this is the most common spot to plant on B. Because it provides the most cover from Heaven and Hell, which is Hell is down here and Heaven is up here, like so. Like I said, Heaven and Hell are the most basic callouts, and defenders will usually like to play in this little corner, like and to be like a rat, like so. And so if you were an attacker and you wanted to call out someone being on this spot, you would call it out as Hell, and if defenders were to rotate in from B to A, this would right here be known as either Rafters or Heaven, which is the most common. I like to say Heaven and Hell the most. But yeah, now you know that this is default, this is Gen, and this is Heaven, and this is Hell, and then this is Tree, and deeper into that opening right over there is where Cat is. And honestly, that covers all of Ascent. Like I said, oh yeah, and then there's this ramp as well that leads to Heaven, but that's a lot of players don't really play here. And so it's not exactly a specific call out here. But yeah, now you know the major parts of Ascent. There is a spot of mid, which is right over here, known as... this spot is actually named after a pro player known as Sabrosa, because I think since the inception of the game, he like made an insane play and got an ace on this specific spot on the map, and so now this spot is named after him. It's not on the map, but if you were to call out a player that isn't top mid, that isn't on the elevated part of top mid, but more so playing where I am right now, you would call this spot Sabrosa. But that's a bit more nuanced, and a lot of people don't exactly make that call out, but I threw out that call out in there anyways for the video to cover, I guess, every part of Ascent. And like I said, I appreciate the response from last video, and hopefully you guys will get some use out of this video as well, and to do Ascent justice, since there are more nuanced callouts on B, and hopefully this video covers that. And now you know all the callouts on Ascent. The following video I will cover is Bind, so thank you for tuning in, as always, and see you then.